Cool. We are recording, and welcome everyone to our third edition of Yancy's Navigating the Festive Season. I'll be hosting this evening's presentation. My name is Robbie. I'm one of the registered nutritionists, and just a few kind of house rules and logistics before we do a round of introductions. So firstly, we can't see or hear you. Hopefully, Ruth. Okay. Right, hopefully it looks like Ruth's sound is back on. So we can't see or hear you. So if you're eating dinner, if you've got dogs in the background, you've got kids running around, it's absolutely fine. Yeah, it's absolutely fine. So I'm just getting notifications on my screen. It's absolutely fine. Make as much noise as you want. It's all good. If you want to communicate with us, a lot of you have already found the chat, which is brilliant. Leave comments and leave comments or any thoughts in the chat. I'm sure Yancy is going to be engaging with you all throughout. So that's absolutely fine. If you do have questions you want us to answer in the Q&A at the end, please put it in the Q&A button. So you should see, if you're on a laptop, it's at the bottom, along with all the little buttons, sorry. If it's on your phone, you should just see a Q&A button somewhere. You might have to press the little three dots for the more things to come up. But yeah, press in the Q&A, put your questions in there, and I'll be moderating that throughout. If it's something I can answer on the spot, if it's not relating to tonight's talk, I might just type it up. If it's a good conversation piece, we'll add it to the questions for the end. And yeah, so I'll hand it over to Yancy to start with. Yancy, do you want to do a quick introduction to yourself? And then we'll move on to Roisin and Tom too.
Yes, yeah, thank you so much, Robbie. So yes, my name is Yancy and I'm a health coach and registered nutritionist here at Second Nature. So I've been at Second Nature almost 5 years now, and I've been working as a nutritionist for 10 years. And I love talking about food, so that's why I'm hosting today's webinar.
Excellent. Okay, Roisin, would you like to introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Roisin. I've been here just over 3 years. And yeah, my passion is also really in food, but also I love the habit and the psychology side of things. So any kind of habit questions around Christmas period, fire them my way. And yeah, I guess that's it. And looking forward to hearing some questions at the end and answering those for you.
Excellent. And if I can remember rightly, Roisin, you are the master of tiny habits. So if anyone's read BJ Fogg's work or his book, ask Roisin at the end. She's all on that. Tom.
Yeah, hello everyone, I'm Tom. I am also a health coach and registered nutritionist at Second Nature, obviously. I've been here 3.5 years, and I love food and nutrition, obviously, but I also really love exercise and being able to break it down into tiny habits. So me and Roisin work really well with those kind of crossovers. So hopefully we can help you a lot today.
Excellent. Thanks, Tom. And Ruth's sound is working. That's great. Thank you, Ruth. Sorry about trying to answer your sound question with sound, but glad it's all working. Okay, Yancy, over to you.
All right, lovely. So thank you, everybody. So in today's webinar, we're going to be looking at how to navigate the festive season. So I know that there are some people here that are Second Nature members and some people that are not. And so welcome everybody, but we're going to be talking about who Second Nature is, so you can get to know us a little bit better. Then we're going to be looking at why it's difficult to make healthy choices during the festive season. And then I'm going to share one tool that's going to help you navigate the festive season confidently. So Second Nature, why do we exist? So we're here to change minds about losing weight. Our app uses behavioral science to retrain your mind to make healthy choices automatically. And we do this so you can stick with them in the long run. So we encourage everyone to have a healthy relationship with food, one where you won't have to count or feel guilty about enjoying it. We know that food is part of life and experiences, which is exactly what we're going to be talking about today. We deliver our programs through an app, and we have a variety of tools that is going to help you along your journey, such as, for example, evidence-based articles, more than 150 recipes, and other tools such as meal planners, journals, and tracking options. And when you sign up, you get assigned a personal health coach who is a registered nutritionist or dietitian, so someone like me, Tom, or Roisin, and we support you along your journey. We also deliver our programs to the NHS. So for anybody outside of the UK, that's the National Health Service, which is something that we're really proud of. But so now let's get things started. So the festive season. So I've been having a lot of conversations in my groups where people have been concerned about making healthy choices during the festive season. And there's been kind of like a lot of worry. And in some way, I kind of feel like we've forgotten what it is that we enjoy about the festive season. So I would love for everyone to write one thing that they enjoy about the festive season in the chat. And so while I'll wait for people to write their answers, I thought that I would share my favorite thing. So I enjoy mince pies. So as you can hear, I'm not from the UK, but I love mince pies. The first time I tried it, I loved it. And I recently tried a homemade one and it's delicious. But it's so good to see everyone writing family, food, mince pies, chocolates, lights, cheese, everything. You know, there's so many positive things about the festive season. I think it's really important to remember because sometimes, you know, we get really nervous about those food choices, but there's so many lovely things. And it's so great to see everybody talking about those connections, which are also part of a healthy lifestyle. But talking about food, I know that sometimes the things that we love can sometimes be the things that make it difficult for us to make healthy choices. So when it comes to the festive season, we know that there's a greater variety of food. There's also high energy dense food. And we also know that there are bigger portion sizes. And because we're spending time with family, it might also mean that we end up eating a little bit more than expected. But one of the other reasons why it can be difficult to make healthy choices is because of a thinking trap that many of us fall into. And that's the all or nothing thinking. And so when it comes to the festive season, it kind of feels like we reach a fork in the road and we see our choices as either quote unquote wrong, where it takes us down the path on the left where we feel like, I don't really want to be here because it doesn't help me reach my goals. So it's all these kinds of foods. Or we see our choices as the quote unquote right choices, where it takes us down the path where we want to go because we feel that those choices are going to help us reach those goals. And the reason that we see our choices in this way is because of the all or nothing thinking. So this is when we're thinking in extreme. So it's either all or nothing. So we're thinking that we need to be perfect all the time. So for example, eating healthy foods like the ones on the right, or we go to the other extreme where we only eat choices like the ones on the left. And we tend to set these standards. And when we don't reach those standards, we're kind of like, we start to feel really guilty and are super critical about ourselves. And this can be really damaging to our confidence and self-esteem. Now, this type of thinking might have been instilled from previous diets where certain foods are labeled as good or bad. And I want to reassure you that there's nothing wrong if that's the way that you're thinking. It's really normal just if you've done other diets in the past. But so now we're standing here and we've reached the fork in the road and we're thinking we can either good or bad choices. But I want to offer you an alternative, give you a clear possible to eat healthy. So for the festive season, we're going on a detour. So this is a new path that we're going to take. So if you imagine this is our new path, it's a time for change. And at the end of the road, you have your goal, whatever that might be. So as mentioned, in this path, things will change. And I would invite you to bring an open mind today. If you think that I've heard this all before, I would then challenge you to think, but yes, have you implemented? Because that's what's going to be key about this. So when we go down this path, we know that there will be bumps on the road. So those bumps on the road might be those social situations we're in when we're eating those less nutritious choices. But what happens in this new path is that we don't steer away from it. Instead, we slow down when we reach that bump. And alongside those bumps, we're also making healthy choices. And along that path, we're enjoying the scenery. So we're taking it slowly and if needed. And that's what's going to allow us to enjoy the festive season. So instead of seeing the festive season as one where you've reached a fork in the road, where it's either or, it's a path where we have this and we have this and we have this too. So we can have both. But in order to go down this path, we need a map. And this is what's going to help us along the way. So I just wanted to check. I could see there's some chat around the sound. I just wanted to check that you can hear me okay, or if you wanted me to change my mic.
Hey Yancy, you know, I think some people are just on their phone and
Okay.
the settings might just need changing. So it's nothing on your end.
All right.
You are slowing down sometimes, which might be your internet. So it might work to turn your camera off, and then the sound might be clearer with the presentation. Just to save your, I can't remember what the word is. Yeah, but it might help to switch camera off so your sound is clearer.
Okay.
Okay, nice one. Yeah, we can have it back to the Q&A.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, so we were going down the path, but we need a map, and that's going to be the most important tool that's going to help you along the way. And this is the one tool, and I think that this is a point where everybody's going to be like, yes, I've heard it all before, but I promise you that this is the one tool that's going to help you. So planning meals and factoring things in is what it's all about. So here we have an example of a meal plan. And it's a meal plan for 7 days of the week. The rows represent the days of the week, so that's when you're reading it left to right, and the columns represent the meals of the day, so that's from top to bottom. So each day we're having 3 meals a day, and you can see that on some days there are some social situations highlighted in green. So on Tuesday we've got movie night, you know, we've got all those lovely Christmas movies where we have mince pies. Friday, Christmas dinner buffet with some wine. Saturday, Christmas shopping with some cake. And Sunday, Christmas lunch with 2 glasses of wine. So this is just an example. It might be that you have more social events going on. If that's the case, you do exactly the same thing. You factor those in. And what I want to highlight is that by factoring things in, we're introducing a certain degree of flexibility that will allow us to move away from the all or nothing thinking. So instead of thinking it's either or, it's we have this and we have that. And so with this meal plan, I want to highlight 3 things that are hopefully going to help you shift your perspective so that you have peace of mind when making these choices. So the first one is that there's 7 days a week, 3 meals, there's 21 meals. Here, 80% of the meals are nutritious meals. That's really good. So when we plan our meals, and we zoom out of those social situations, it helps us see the reality of what's happening. This is going to help you to not get obsessed over one particular food or meal and give you the freedom to go about your day and your week and actually enjoy the festive season. The second one is after the meal out. So for example, or when you've had the less nutritious choices, so on a Tuesday or on a Friday or on a Saturday, you've gone back to have a healthy breakfast and you keep having healthy balanced meals throughout the day. There's a tendency to want to compensate when we've had a meal out. We think, you know, I've had this, I've had that. I want to restrict the next day because it's going to help me reach my goals a lot quicker. This technique is what leads us to overeat because we're so hungry. So instead, go back to your routine, okay? Make sure that you include those balanced choices. What's also important here is that you're having delicious meals, and this is going to help you keep satisfied so you don't feel deprived. It's when we start depriving ourselves that we have that tendency to overeat. And the third one is, you can see that we have alcohol on some days, and we've planned for the next day. And that's really important because we know that alcohol, it might help us fall asleep, but it interrupts our deep sleep. So we don't get the rest and recovery that we need. And so the next day we're feeling really tired. And when we're tired, that's when we tend to go for those foods that are really high in sugar. So making sure that you plan your meals is going to help you keep on top of things so that you feel that you're having a balance throughout the week. So now we've got like a really good overview, and this is like the one tool, if you do anything from this webinar, it's like, I really want you to plan your meals and factor things in. But what I thought that we could do now is like take a deep dive into some of those days to see that how the all or nothing thinking shows up and how we might go about challenging them. So we're going to start with Saturday. We've gone Christmas shopping and we've had a slice of chocolate cake. So an example of the all or nothing thinking is focusing on the less nutritious choice that you've made. So we're thinking, oh, I've had this slice of cake, this is really bad. And then because we think it's bad, then we also think that we're bad. And then we start feeling guilty for having that food. But what happens is that we want to validate that thought. And so we're like, okay, let me go to the scales to prove to myself that I'm right. And there you have it. The weight has gone up, right? We've ruined it. But what's happened is that we've zoomed into that choice, and that has impacted the way that we look at things and the choices that we will make in the future. I've had this bad food, it's made me gain weight, so I might as well continue having it, right? But let's zoom out to see what is actually going on. So if we look at it, we've had a healthy breakfast with a good source of protein throughout the day. So I can see that somebody wrote in the chat, the problem is that when it's Christmas, food is everywhere. You're totally right. It's everywhere. But because you're having these balanced meals, it's helping you keep fuller for longer throughout the day so that you're more intentional about your choices. And that's what's going to be really important. You then had your lunch, but you included your chocolate cake because that's what you wanted. So you're not having it because it's there. You're having it because you want it. You're being intentional about your choices. And then you come home and you have your dinner. So when we zoom out, we can see that we're being more intentional about our choices. And we're not putting certain foods on a pedestal, and then we're able to enjoy it with more freedom. That weight gain could have been because we're eating an extra portion of something. Yes, it's higher in carbs, so you will store it as glycogen, but it won't necessarily mean fat gain. So let's just remember that the scales don't always tell us the full story. So planning and zooming out can help us move away from the all or nothing thinking. Now I wanted to take a little bit of a closer look at the meals out, because I know that during the festive season, a lot of people are going out, whether that's with work or family, and we want perhaps a little bit more guidance on how to make healthy choices. So when it comes to meals out, so from our meal plan, we had a buffet and we also had a Christmas lunch. I kind of have like 3 tips for you, so 3 options. So the first option is have what you want. Just simply have what you want. You factored it in, enjoy it, and then the next day you get back into the swing of things. The second option is have what you want, but make it perhaps a little bit more balanced. For example, you go to an Italian restaurant, have the pasta, but perhaps you want to miss out on the starter, share the desserts, and instead of 2 glasses of wine, you're going to have 1. Or you can focus on having a balanced meal by using the balanced plate model to guide your choices. And this is going to be particularly helpful when you go to a buffet. So this is focusing on having a good source of protein to help you keep fuller for longer. And this is an example of what it would look like. And then when you're in a restaurant, I know that it's going to be a little bit more challenging to go through all of the options that you could have due to the different types of cuisine. So Tom right now is going to share a guide in the chat that is going to give you some healthy options that you can choose from when eating out, so that hopefully you feel a little bit more confident. So it's either have what you want or focus on the balance. That it's about zooming out and looking at what you're having throughout the week. So overall, the key message is that when we don't factor in our choices, we look at that event in isolation, and that's what leads to the all or nothing thinking trap. And what can happen is that when things aren't perfect, we end up doing nothing at all, and we just quote unquote give in, right? So factoring in these choices will help us A, feel more comfortable about our choices, B, normalize having these types of food. Yes, we remember it's the festive season. It's normal to have these types of food that perhaps aren't available throughout the year, like mince pies. And we move away from the all or nothing thinking. So here you're being very intentional about your choices, and you're focusing on having something because you're enjoying it. So you're reframing how you see food, and it's about enjoying it. And hopefully this gives you peace of mind that you're headed in the right direction. So come New Year, you won't have to go on a fat diet or anything. You just carry on what you're doing because you know how to make healthy choices, and you also know how to enjoy what you want. So now that you have your meal plan, you're all set and ready to go, right? You're like, yes, I'm on top of the world. I'm ready. I think, yes, I'm all set. Yeah. But eventually, and I know this is going to happen to someone at some point, eventually you're going to be at a work party or you're going to be at somebody's house, something or other, and you're going to find somebody that's going to try and push you to have something that you don't want to have. And we're like, oops, I had my meal plan. I thought that I was ready, but I'm not really prepared on how to deal with the situation. And we know that that peer pressure is very real. And sometimes we might feel that we need to have what everyone else is having to fit in, but we don't have to. So I would say my suggestion is to set some boundaries and decline respectfully if it's something that you genuinely don't want to have. If you do want to have it, go ahead. But if you don't feel like you don't want to have it, don't have it. And I know that sometimes when we set boundaries, we might feel like we're letting others down. And I think this is particularly challenging for people that tend to be people pleasers. Hello, I'm one of them. We feel like we might offend them. But the thing is, each time you say something, you say yes to something that you don't want, you're saying no to yourself. And that sends the message that you're not the priority. Obviously, there's the balance of acknowledging of not being rude if you've gone to somebody's house for dinner. But just be mindful about your choices and remember that there's nothing wrong in saying what we want. So here are 3 examples of what you might want to say when somebody's pushing you to have something that you don't want. So it's about stating your need and then changing the topic of conversation so that you're in control. Now, you don't have to change the topic of conversation. It's totally fine to just say no. But from my own personal experience, I find that it helps to change the topic so that the person doesn't keep pushing you. And it can be a really good distraction, especially if there's an awkward silence afterwards. So remember, one of the things that you can say is, for example, I'm focusing on my health right now. And then you're like, has anyone watched any good Christmas movies lately? Another option might be, I don't feel like it. Tell me, how have you been doing? It's been a while since we've had a proper chat. And then finally, I'm taking a break from alcohol. It doesn't agree with me anymore. Have you thought of any New Year's resolutions? So those are just some options that you might want to practice with someone close to you so that you're confident, or you might come up with some other options yourself. And remember, when you say these things, people might call you boring, etc., whatever. That says more about them than you. The more you practice observing people's reactions, the more you will realize that the way they react has nothing to do with you. So I know that this takes practice, but just don't put too much pressure on yourself to get this right either. So next steps. The key is, above all, make a meal plan. Okay, that's going to be your tool that's going to help you navigate the festive season confidently. If you're not sure where to go next, you can ask us any questions after today, but you can also ask for your health coach for any support. If you don't know what to say, you can say, I've watched the webinar today. I wanted to get started with meal planning. Can you help me out? If you kind of know what you want to do or not sure about meal planning, we did a meal planning on webinar not so long ago, and we can share the link in the chat as well. But now you're on a new path, and you know that there's going to be bumps on the road, but you're ready for it. You've got your map, you're going to enjoy the scenery, and you know that you've got support if you need it. Honestly, reach out if you need it. Don't be shy. And I know that it's been a tough couple of years with the pandemic and lockdown, etc. It's been really challenging. Lots of challenging situations on top of all of the other perhaps challenging personal situations we might be facing. And you know what? It's difficult enough, and we don't need to make it any more difficult than it already is by being critical and harsh on ourselves when we're making these changes. So be kind to yourself when you're making these changes and when you're challenging this type of thinking, and you'll see what a big difference this makes. And when you're kind to yourself, you're more likely to be kind to others, And this can be a really good, real gift to somebody, especially if they're going through a tough time or being really critical about themselves. So if you're not a Second Nature member, join us. We would love to have you. You can go to our website and sign up. You can also go to our Instagram for anybody that's here and doesn't follow us on Instagram. You can follow us for more nutrition tips. And I wanted to thank everybody for taking some time aside to listen to the tips, and hopefully you're feeling a little bit more confident about the festive season, and we're ready to take some questions.
Amazing. Thank you, Yancy. I think if you want to put your stop sharing and put your camera back on, I think would be good. I think your bandwidth would survive. Just going to get everyone's faces up so I can see them. Cool. Okay. So yeah, please. Thank you, Yancy. That was brilliant. That was even better than last year. I love the way you did the meal plan with the meals coming out to provide real perspective on, you know, the overall pattern is the important thing. I feel like I say that a lot, so I'm glad it's like a really good visual to see that. So yeah, we're getting some questions through. First one was from Rhonda. She's saying the meal plans are heavy on Greek yogurt. She really hates that stuff. What are other options? Well, I think everyone at Second Nature has their own preference of yogurt, so I think we'll have some good advice here. So any other preference on yogurt, team?
I prefer natural yogurt. Plain stuff. I can understand. Yeah, some people don't like Greek yogurt, but then there are loads of other breakfasts to choose from as well. So anything that's a good source of protein. So eggs are great. But even simpler things like porridge and then topping it with some nuts and seeds so you're left feeling really full. That can be great on a cold winter's day as well.
Yeah, I also really like the mini omelets. Those are some that that's not about yogurt, but those are some that you can make, like for example, on a Sunday, and then you've got breakfast for at least 4 days, and you can warm them up in the microwave, and it's nice to have something warm in the morning. So yeah, it's about choosing something that you really enjoy. If you don't like Greek yogurt, that was just like one example. I know that sometimes with these examples, it doesn't meet everybody's needs, but what I wanted to highlight there is that it's also okay to have the same breakfast every day, that you don't have to have something different, because sometimes we put pressure on ourselves that we have to have the same something different, but it's okay to have the same thing, and then focus on having variety for lunch and dinner.
Brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, my personal preference is skyr yogurt there's like a 5% creamy version now. So skyr is like really high protein yogurt, and now there's like a 5% fat where they've added cream. It's delicious. Yeah. I also find Greek yogurt a bit intense.
Sorry, just on that, I think there's so many different varieties and alternatives nowadays. So like, if you don't like something, try something else out. Obviously read the labels, make sure there's not tons of added stuff into it, but the supermarkets are well and truly stocked up with lots of different alternatives now, so try and find something that you like if you do want to have something that has yogurt in it. Yeah,
100%. Thanks, Tom. Good point. Cool. So this is a good question from Emma, and I think this is really common for people, particularly staying like with family and friends over Christmas. Any suggestions if you're staying with someone else and don't have much control over food? I think there's a good general question here, as well as when you're being catered for, essentially, how can you manage that situation?
God, I think a lot of us can relate to this. I know certainly, like, I'm going to stay with family, and it is difficult when things are more out of your control. So I'd probably start with what feels in your control whilst you're away. And you could look at this holistically. So yes, food plays a big part, but like Robbie said at the start, exercise, what type of movement can you fit into your day? And does that feel more within your control? And then other things like if you're being served up a dish, yes, it is a little bit harder. So could you focus on how well hydrated you're staying during the day, listening to your hunger and fullness cues? So things that are more within your control rather than focusing on those aspects that aren't within your control. And then to take a slightly different stance when you're away, say you did want to have some more control over your food choices, could you offer to cook a couple of nights of the week? Could you take your Second Nature recipe book and say, these are some recipes I love. How do you feel about incorporating these into the next couple of days? but yeah, lastly, like not putting too much pressure on yourself at the same time. It doesn't need to be perfect whilst you're away, or it doesn't need to be perfect ever. Just do what you can. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add.
Yeah, I think Yancy touched on it, is actually trying to have a conversation with them in advance, actually explaining to them that you're making these lifestyle changes to improve your health. Actually goes down really well. One, it helps with the peer pressure side of it, but also they understand your journey, and they may, I can't guarantee it, they may actually try and support you a bit more. Another thing I would also say is, why don't you take a dish, maybe second nature friendly, along with you, and maybe they could try that too.
Nice one, Tom. I was actually going to say something very similar. It's like being really, I think people appreciate when you're open and honest with them, you know, like if you say before, like you said, these are my preferences. And like you said, Tom, letting them know about your situation, they might be interested to try certain foods and recipes as well. So I think that's a great point. And like Roisin said, you can never be perfect anyway. So why expect to be perfect when you're staying around someone else's house? So we're getting specific questions around how to make different foods healthier, like afternoon teas, mince pies. But I think there's a general question here of maybe a mindset, looping back to what you were talking about, Yancy, in terms of overall balance. It seems there's questions coming through. How can we make these specific things healthier? And I wonder if it's more of a question around mindset and how we approach, you know, these sweet treats like mince pies and afternoon teas over Christmas. Any thoughts on that?
I'm happy to go. Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Robbie. I think it's mindset related. And for me, this would come back to, what does your overall balance look like? Like, what does your ideal balance look like? Does that mean enjoying some mince pies that you really love rather than ones that are just all right? Because I think we all know, like, some are better than others, and I'd rather have the real deal and be like, that was a great mince pie. I feel satisfied. It's really hit that craving. I've enjoyed it with my family, and then move on, rather than feeling like, oh, that wasn't great, and actually I still want a good mince pie. So it would come back to, what is my ideal balance and what am I happy with? And then I'd probably look at, if I'm happy with the balance that I'm achieving, I'm having a couple of mince pies or some alcohol, great. If you're happy with it, we don't have to make any changes. If you don't, how far away are you from your ideal? And then let's take a look at little things that, you know, that we could change so you are closer to what your ideal balance is. But yeah, it would come back to that it's okay to have those foods within your diet, especially if they're things you enjoy.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say to really focus, it's like a mindset thing. Focus on having the thing you enjoy. I mean, there's nothing wrong in trying other alternatives, but I know that it can happen. For example, sometimes people want a brownie and they end up making like a black bean brownie or a sweet potato brownie, and it doesn't really hit the mark. And what ends up happening is that you eat more of that. So it's actually hindering your progress even more, because you're eating a lot more to satisfy that craving, whereas you could have ended up having like a smaller brownie and it would have like hit the mark. So there's nothing wrong in finding healthier alternatives, but it's really considering that balance and will it hit the mark, because you can end up eating a lot more in some cases. So that's just an example.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'd just mirror what Roisin said, really. It's like, your health is not defined by whether you choose a healthy mince pie or just a normal mince pie. It's defined by the overall pattern. 365 days a year, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line. Your health is not defined by the afternoon tea you have this Saturday. It's defined by the overall balance. So really reflect on that and just think, I can just go and enjoy an afternoon tea. That's normal. Just go and enjoy it and eat mindfully, enjoy the treat. And remember, with these events as well, I always say to people, food is a complementary to these occasions, but it's not the occasion itself. The occasion is going with friends and family. That's the experience you're after. Food complements the occasion, but it's not the occasion. So keep that in mind too. Tom, I think you wanted to add something here.
To be honest, I was figuring out you have over 1,000 meals a year, and actually is one of those meals actually going to impact your long-term change? Most likely not. So for me, I would just say enjoy it. Like, as you were saying about the occasion, like, you're there to spend time with people or to celebrate something, so do.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Yancy said, if you try and replace the delicious chocolate cake or mince pie or whatever for some healthier, so-called healthier alternative, it probably won't hit the spot and you'll still crave that food anyway. So then, yeah, you might overeat. I think that was a good point. Good. Nice bit of maths there, Tom. I like it. Okay. So we've got a couple of questions around alcohol intake, which I think is great, because I think it's obviously everyone drinks a bit more than they probably normally do over the Christmas holiday season. I think that's entirely normal. Kevin's asking, is there any drink better than others? Like, you know, if you're out drinking, is there any way you would maybe mix it up? What drinks might you focus on to try and limit the damage, I suppose?
Yeah, so I think that maybe we'll have different opinions here, but when I say, the advice that I say with alcohol is to have the drinks that you like and enjoy it in moderation. There could be some better options, definitely, but I think it comes again to what I was saying before. It's like, focus on what you enjoy, because the more that you deprive yourself, the more you're going to want it. So have it, but have it in moderation. So instead of having 5 pints, could it be 3 pints? Instead of having 4 glasses of wine, can it be 2? Can it be a smaller? So focus on making a smaller change that way. I don't know if you guys have other suggestions.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I'd also try to drink some water. I know you're probably like, oh God, having a glass of water between each drink, like, sounds like boring advice, but it makes such a difference the next day as well. Like, you probably wake up with a clearer head because you are more hydrated than you would have been without. And it can also make you just slow down slightly and enjoy those alcoholic drinks in between. So yeah, try to have a couple of glasses of water as well in between alcoholic drinks.
For me, I'm not the biggest of drinkers, and actually maybe a little challenge for you all is actually sometimes you don't have to drink to have a good time. Yes, there is peer pressure, and Yancy touched on it really well during the presentation there, but actually you can still have a good time without having to drink if you just don't feel like it.
Yep, absolutely, Tom. Couldn't agree with you more. And as well, you know, you can always just have a soft drink. You can have a mocktail. You could try alcoholic free drinks as well. I think there's many options out now, right? So yeah, I think that's a good point, Tom. We don't always have to drink to have a good time. It's like again, coming back to the occasion should be enjoyment, not the alcohol. The alcohol can sometimes complement it, but it can actually sometimes take away from a lot of it as well. So yeah, absolutely. Good advice. So Tom, I think I'm going to direct this question at you for now and see what the panel thinks. But Delia's asked a question around whether you can balance out excess indulgence over Christmas with increased activity.
It's a really good question. I mean, again, people might have different opinions on this, but I would say that any exercise is going to be more beneficial than doing none at all. Yes, we might eat a bit more during the festive period, but if we are intentional with being active during this time, again, we can use this as a time to spend time with friends and family. It can really help. It won't necessarily counterbalance your food intake. You'd have to do a lot of exercise if we're talking about the energy coming in versus the energy coming out. But yeah, exercise is brilliant for our long-term health, and we should continue doing it during the festive period in a way that you enjoy the most. Doesn't quite answer it like you'd like it to, but I hope that helps.
I think that definitely helps, Tom, and I agree. We can't. It's also around mindsets, exercise. So a lot of people have this, oh, I need to burn off last night's pizza, so I'm going to go to the gym, right? And it's like, it's not quite how the body works, and we really need to look at exercise. It's also not the relationship of exercise that we want to promote. We want to promote exercise for the benefits of health and just overall well-being. You just feel better if you're physically active and you exercise, particularly if you're doing something, like you said, Tom, that you enjoy. And yeah, so really don't see it as a thing you have to do to make up, so to speak, for overindulgences. It's not the case at all. Although, like you said, Tom, as well, you might just feel a bit better if you do exercise as well. Like I said at the start of the webinar, the one thing that kind of glues me together over Christmas is exercise. And it's not because it helps me burn off the extra calories. It's just because it helps me maintain a level of balance. I just feel better when I exercise. So yeah, try and focus on the positives. Roisin, Yancy, did you have anything else to add on the exercise question?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you guys have said. I think it's like important not to see it like as a form of punishment, that just because you've had that whatever meal that you've had, that, you know, you have to go over and like burn it off by doing exercise. And then it's also will help you look at like, what's your overall habit with exercise? Like, are you only doing it when you have like a big meal? And there's so many other benefits to exercise, not just weight loss. It's just good for our overall mood and mental well-being. So just focusing on the overall habit. But the reality is that we can't outrun a bad diet. So it's, you know, looking at our food choices as well if we've got specific health goals.
Absolutely. Thanks,
Yeah.
Yancy. Roisin, anything to add before we move on to the next question?
Nothing really, except it's like a great social activity, like getting your family out as well with you. I mean, I used to really dislike it when I was younger. Like my parents would always drag us out for a Christmas Day walk. And now it's one of my favorite things. Like we all catch up, we wear our festive jumpers. I feel like everyone's extra nice that day when you like walk around the village and everyone's saying hello. So definitely be to get family involved as well. If you want to do some extra movement, it's nice to do a couple of things at the same time.
100%. I love a Christmas Day walk. I think it's lush. So Miriam's asked a really good question, which I think is probably going to be on a lot of people's minds. Christmas and the festive season can be really stressful. There can be a lot going on. So she's asking about emotional eating during the festive season. So food and drink is often what people turn to, she's saying, which is absolutely true. And yeah, meeting up with family, meeting up with friends, a big calendar, it can be really stressful. So yeah, emotional eating over Christmas. What are our thoughts?
Firstly, I'd say it's great that you've thought ahead about it and you've thought actually this might impact me, because like Yancy was saying about meal planning, but generally planning in general, if you know there are things that impact you, is a really helpful tool to do. So from there, I would look at what helps you. We've got some great emotional eating articles in the app that you might like to refer to as you go through this. But yeah, I'd look at what else helps you in those situations. So if for example, it's from stress and you found it really stressful hosting and that's your main emotion, what else helps you to manage stress and help you feel more relaxed? And write that down in advance. So on the day, you don't have to think about it. You think, I can pull up my notes. I've decided these 4 activities really help me. I can choose one of them. And you've kind of taken away some of that thinking on the day to make it easier.
Yeah, I agree with you, Roisin. I think that, you know, when we're really stressed, it's really hard to make those decisions. And we think like, oh, what is my coping mechanism when I'm stressed? Like we have to do it ahead of time. So having, I would say, 1 or 2 things that you can do that are quick and easy. My favorite thing to do when I'm really stressed is like to take a deep breath. When I'm stressed, I find like I'm not breathing, I can't think, and I'm just reacting. So that will help calm down your nervous system. So that you can think about how you want to respond to that situation. It can be a habit to reach for food just because there's so much of it around it during the festive season. But as you say, Roisin, having those 1 to 2 tools ahead of time can help, and ones that are quick and easy. Like sometimes going for a walk, it could be an option, but sometimes we can't leave the house. So just taking a couple of deep breaths can really make a difference.
Yeah, totally. And I think actually, if we do emotionally eat, it's okay. It is not the end of the world, and it's very normal to find comfort in things like food and drink. As long as we kind of try and focus again on balancing out our week and our day, and we don't go down like a downward spiral, then yeah, it's okay. But one other thing I would say, it's kind of touching on what Roisin and Yancy have said, is that being aware of our triggers. So like planning for them in advance, being aware of them, having that strategy in place, and acknowledging them as well, can really, really help us kind of take control of that time. Absolutely.
I think it's a good point, Tom. If you think most of us were probably raised as kids with using food as comfort when we were crying or throwing our toys at the pram, whatever, our parents would probably give us a bottle or something to eat to calm us down. So a lot of us are actually, you know, hardwired to be comforted by food. And there is research showing that your central nervous system does calm down, cortisol levels decrease after you've eaten something. So it does actually work. But like you said, like you've all kind of touched on, it's it's really focusing on like long-term gain over short-term gain. So eating often makes you feel better in the moment, but it won't make you feel better in the long term. So practicing things that will actually help you manage stress in the long run is always a good thing. And if you're on the Second Nature program, please speak to your health coach about long-term stress management and outlook on stress, because I think that's a really important thing to kind of nail down. Right, so we don't have any questions in the chat, so we do have a bit of time left. But so if anyone does have any final questions, please send them through. But I think I'm just going to reach out to the panel and say for the last 5 or 10 minutes or so, for you all to highlight along, like as a bonus outside of Yancy's tips, what is one thing that you would recommend to people? It's always hard to say these things. I know this is a bit of a rubbish question, but if there was one thing that you would say to people that what you think would have the biggest impact on ensuring like a healthy, balanced but enjoyable festive season, like what would that be? And you're allowed to reiterate something from Yancy's talk if you want to.
I'll go first. It was from like Yancy's talk last year, and you did briefly say it today, but I don't know if everyone would have picked up on it. It's to use the word and instead of or. And I always think about this. So I'm going to have a balanced lunch and a mince pie, rather than I'll have a balanced lunch or a mince pie. And just that really challenges your mindset to think I can include both, and that's okay, and that's what my balance looks like. So it would be use the word and, not or.
Brilliant. I love that. That's such a simple one. Well done, Roisin. Right, challenges to you now, Tom.
I think just being mindful of the entire time. So whether it's social, emotional, food related, it's kind of staying present in that time, like being aware of those choices, acknowledging them, feeling okay about them, and not feeling like you have ruined your routine because of it. So being mindful of the time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom. Yancy, outside of your amazing tips that you suggested today, have you got anything else that you would, any silver bullets, or is there anything you'd like to reiterate from your talk?
Yeah, I think it's something that I was kind of like reflecting on whether I should include it in the talk or not, because I wanted to make the talk like really positive and make sure that everybody ends on a high note. But just based on some of the comments that were made in the chat, I know that sometimes the festive season can bring up some challenging or difficult emotions. It's not always very happy. It can be very stressful depending on family dynamics. It can be lonely. And those types of emotions, that's when we tend to go to food to deal with those emotions. And I just want to reassure everyone that it's normal to experience those emotions and that you are not alone. If you are recognizing that you are experiencing those emotions and using food to cope with them, that's okay. And, reach out to your health coach if that's something that you want to work on. And yeah, that you're just not alone, and there are different ways to cope with these difficult emotions. And yeah.
Brilliant. Excellent. Right, team. Well, we do have 10 minutes spare time, but I think the questions have dried up, so I think we can leave it there. Yancy, thank you so much for a brilliant talk. It really was amazing. Roisin, Tom, thanks so much for being part of the panel and for all your advice. Really, really useful, really helpful. And to everyone who came, we had an amazing turnout, over 110 people, which is brilliant, amazing stuff. We hope you have an amazing Christmas. If you're with Second Nature already, just reach out to your health coach, reach out to the communities if you need support. That's what they're there for. And Yancy, you're just getting loads of amazing comments in the chat, which is brilliant. So thank you to everyone. And if you're not with Second Nature, join Second Nature, easy. Or follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter. We're on Pinterest, we're on TikTok, YouTube now, just any social media you can think of, you can find us. We've also got hundreds of guides on our website as well, which is packed full of like Christmas information too. So yeah, I hope you all have an amazing Christmas, and we are back in the new year with a webinar. We haven't got the registration form for it yet, but keep in touch, keep an eye out on our socials. We will be releasing the registration link soon. We'll be back in the new year focusing on New Year's resolutions and how to make sustainable New Year's resolutions, and avoiding that all or nothing mindset, etc. So we'll be back in the new year. Until then, I hope you all have a great Christmas, and we will see you soon. And thanks again, Yancy, and bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.